Good, we are live now. Okay, welcome everybody. We have the great pleasure of having Cecilia Arditto with us. She's an Argentinian composer. She studied in Banfield at the beginning in Buenos Aires, and then she went international. She's currently in Amsterdam. She has a lot of music performed abroad in the US, in Australia. Where else? I can see Canada, China, of course, Latin America. She's also been awarded with a lot of very distinguished scholarships, some of them in Buenos Aires, some of them in Europe and other countries. So we have a very international composer with us. I will let her to present herself a little bit more and start with her presentation.
Well, thanks a lot for having me. It's been a very interesting day, meeting some of you and getting to know about your music. It's amazing the space you are opening with the ensembles and this kind of floating community that we have now, thanks to this pandemic. I'm gonna introduce myself. My name is Cecilia Arditto. As Maria said, I am from Argentina. I live in Amsterdam now for almost 20 years. Today, I'm going to talk about my music and show you some pieces that are very important for me. And then at the end of this presentation, I will leave a space open for questions, comments, and interaction. In few words, I can say that I always been interested in sound, in any sound around, the sound of the music instruments, but also the sound of the objects and the sound of everything. Sounds of nature, sounds of things. I started making music and bringing all the sounds in my musical scores. I started working first with musical instruments and working in what we know as extended techniques, finding very unusual sounds in every instrument. I have a project that is called Musica Invisible, that is invisible music, working with extended techniques. We all know that there's a lot of things done for extended techniques. So what does it mean? What does it mean for me? What I want is just to find special ways of designing the musical instruments and finding these new sounds, these new ways of doing. And I don't know if they are really new, but they are certainly personal. They are sounds I like and sounds that I find working together with the musicians. It's extremely a lot of work, finding all the possibilities, then choosing them, orchestrating them, and then writing them down and using them in the music. But what I want is, I don't want to write a catalog of physical curiosities, but just to trigger the perception. So I like to say that instead of extended techniques, I'm working in extended listening techniques. I'm gonna give you some examples. I'm really busy with microtonality and finding in very special positions in the flute, in the clarinet, very small steps. We know that the tone has 2 semitones. Every semitone has quarter tones, and I divided the quarter tone in 8 mini steps. So one tone has 32 mini steps. And so these are very, very small distances for the year. But the idea is not to convert people, audience, listeners, in listening machines, but certainly just to open the listening, just to go deep into the heart of sound. I started working with instruments, and little by little I started adding other things in my music that are the objects. And using the objects, choosing the objects that are around, simple objects, because of their sound, for the sound qualities. And then I am using these objects in my music. And usually what I do is just to bring them together with the music instruments. I'm gonna show you an example. I wrote a cycle for flute called Musica Invisibile. And in one of the numbers of the etudes, I'm working with ventilators. And you will see how the sound of the flute, in this case it's a bass flute, is related with the frequencies of the ventilators. So the ventilators are a musical instrument, are orchestrated as if they were Stradivarius, and bringing them together with the instruments. Let's see if I'm gonna show you. A little fragment.
Sorry, we're not getting any sound. Did you check the
Okay.
box?
Okay, of course. Yeah? Okay, where I am. Can you see me, right? Can you hear me now? Okay. So all my music is very much score oriented. I write everything in traditional music notation. The research with instrument, with object is a lot of work. It's a lot of experimentation. And from that, I have to find what is working, not only for the ventilator I have at home, but for any ventilator that if I send a score to China, someone can play my music. And just to make this happen, we have to find the genetic aspect of every object and a very effective music notation. What I really like about music notation is that you are researching in something for months and months and months, and then you come out with a piece. And this piece is very thought, it has been very elaborated. But then what you have is something that is live, that is played in the moment. So that I think is the magical part of musical notation, that you have something that is very intellectual and controlled, but at the same time is something to be played live. I'm going to show you other project that I have that is called Musique Concrete. It's based in some ideas of Pierre Schaeffer, the father of Musique Concrete. And in this project, I am working just with objects and making music with them. This project also has a visual aspect, also that is part of the musical score. Okay, I can do it right. This piece is a piece for a string telephone that is a little thin with a long, long, long string and tape. So it's incredible how much can you do with something that is very simple. Working with simple objects is not easy. Many times it's easier to write a piece for instruments that they function and you know what you expect. But with object, it's a whole new world, and then you have to make it work and in any circumstances. So it takes a lot of exploration and then a lot of strategies to write down all these sounds. Usually what I do is working with analog sounds, like it sounds that you can play live. And they sound like electronics, but in fact, they are play live, they are simple objects. I'm going to show you a piece that is called The Dearest Dream. That is an integration of an ensemble and simple objects. This was a very special occasion because it was the anniversary of the birth of Karl Marx. And they organized a huge event in Trier, that is where Karl Marx was born in Germany. And they made a competition. I was very lucky to have the second prize, and I made a piece for this occasion. My piece is called The Dearest Dream, that has to do with all Karl Marx philosophy and ideas. And it's a piece for an ensemble that is super academic. And they have a soloist that is an anti-soloist that is playing very humble things. In a way, just confronting a bit the ideas of this capitalism and workers. So I divided the piece in four piece parts, and each part has to do with a symbolic object in the philosophy of Karl Marx. He talks about the land, and you will see like people transversing peas, grains. You will see again the string telephone, because then you have a string quartet made with the string telephones and a string quartet playing traditionally. So it's this contraposition of spheres. And then you will see the machine, again, the ventilators. And then you have the workers. That is the percussion player sweeping the floor with a broom. The funny thing is that they organized this concert in a Baroque palace, full of paintings. So it was very nice to see this guy sweeping the floor of the palace with a simple broom, just making the pose. And I wanted a man to do that job. I didn't want a woman to use in the room on stage. So I was very lucky. I'm going to show you a fragment of the piece, The Dearest Dream, by the Birmingham Contemporary Group. Then I'm gonna show you. You have the link, so if you wanna, because it's a very subtle piece and the sound is not perfect. So then I send you the link and the score, so you can follow it and understand better if you want. I start all over again. I started working with sounds and extended techniques. I start adding objects to my language, bringing everything to my music scores. And from that, working on an extended language, adding other aspects like the visual world and other aspects like movements, gestures, and stage design. Everything coming, everything in the score, everything to be played live. I'm gonna share now a duo I wrote that is called Gestalt, and it's the most abstract music I ever wrote, because it's a music that is made of sound, and then you can follow the score if you want. It's different sections. Every section has a different stage design. So the two performers that are a percussion player and a piano, they have to do actions, they have to walk, and they are not actors. I don't want to write a piece for actors. I don't want to write a piece for dancers. I want to write a piece for musicians that are following a score, and sometimes what they do, it doesn't sound. It's 1 sec here. Okay. Well, this is one of the most abstract pieces I ever wrote. I have a couple of pieces in this line of working, including a lot of other elements, but they function like music. They are reading, they are counting, and they are musicians playing their instruments. I'm going to show you another piece. What I want to say is like all this music is music that is zero improvised. Usually what it has is a lot of calculations, a lot of structure behind to make it work. And maybe then it sounds a bit like natural, but everything has a meaning. If you raise your hand, then in this context, this raising your hand is like a musical motif. And then it's related with other action, that is raising a mallet and then bringing it down. And then every element is a musical element. Next piece I'm going to show you is a piece that I am integrating many of the objects you saw before. That is a chamber ensemble, that is 4 cellos and 4 double basses, and the string telephone. But the string telephone now is not attached to a tin, but is attached to the same cello. So it's very interesting in terms of sonority. It's fantastic, but also is bringing some space design and some visual condition to the music. Next piece is called Distancia de Rescate, and it's based on a novel by an Argentinian writer, Samantha Schwerin. In her novel, it's a very dark psychological vision of the Argentinian lands that full of agrotoxics. It's a story of a mother and a kid, and she's talking about this distance between them, like if this like a string between them, and when the kid is in danger, she feels this string. So what I made is I made it very literal. I have all the cellos with strings attached, and I showed the piece to Samantha, and she loved it. She said that the psychological atmosphere of her novel was there. So I was relieved. So yeah. And I show you a couple of minutes at the end. This piece is made only with natural harmonics. So the idea is the players, they go inside of the string because they have to find very far away harmonics with very special techniques, just really finding with a little part of the nail to really crack the string and find the upper harmonics the piece is asking for. And so the metaphor is like you go inside the string and you go outside the string, and the strings are coming also out from the instrument. Next piece I want to show you is a piece for an orchestra I wrote that is called Tissue. It's been I won a competition last year with this piece in Switzerland, and it's been a very nice experience for me because all my life I've been researching in one thing, in one object, in one instrument, and then putting maybe one together, two together. And after so many years, I was ready just to start writing music for like larger groups. And I wanted to write a piece for orchestra. I have this music in my mind. I didn't have any opportunity, but I have the music in my mind, and I had to do it. So I wrote this piece for orchestra that is called Tissue. And somehow I was using a lot of all the experience I had during the years with the instruments. The name Tissue, it means skin. This orchestra piece is kind of like a concerto for percussion, for the big instruments of the percussion family. I have the big timpanis that they have a huge skin, the gran casa, the lion roars, the medal bells, and the musicians, they were playing the instruments like if they're touching skin with the hands and doing a lot of things also with the timpanis, as resonance boxes. So we have these two performers with these big surfaces and all the orchestra around, a bit like embracing them, like a skin. And also many of the actions they are doing are with the hands, playing the instruments, the strings with the hands, and talking inside the violas using the texts, and using napkins also, touching the napkins like skin, like rubbing and crumbling the napkins. In my experience, writing a piece for orchestra was quite easy. I was surprised for that. Because somehow I had all these instruments to play with. I made a map of the orchestra, so I wanted to know what was it sounding, when, and where. And then I knew that something was going on here, and then the sounds were traveling. I was writing down all these ideas in space. But when you write for orchestra, it's an incredibly amount of work. I had to write music for 49 people. But at the same time, then you know that the things you are writing down, even if they were kind of extended techniques and complex things for an orchestra, they are working very well. Working with objects is a very good school because it's much more difficult to write for an orchestra of ventilators that they do something different every time than for a group of musicians that maybe they don't play modern music, but somehow it's kind of like an unknown territory. I'm gonna show you some fragments of my piece, Tissue. In my glasses. You will see the part of the napkins. then you can go to I send you the link if you wanna hear the whole thing, and also you have the music score. The good thing of this piece is like they have like an incredibly amount of extended techniques that I've been using during the years. And then when you face an orchestra, you have to really be sure what you are doing and how to ask that, because they are not used to play this kind of music. And everything was working extremely well, because the things I was asking, they were in a way very safe within this kind of language. So it's a very good experience. Well, so I'm gonna close my presentation with a project I will be working in next year, probably next 2 years. I've been starting my career, let's say, writing for very small, for isolated things. Now I feel the need to work with larger groups like orchestras. And I'm going to write an opera. That is my next project. And this is very recent. I won a competition last Thursday. So I'm going to write an opera for the opera, Mannheim Opera, based in a novel by Albert Camus, L'étranger, The Stranger, it's in English. Together with an scenographer, I made a concept that I can bring all my experience working with sound, with objects, with lights, with movements, with gestures into an opera. So for me, it's like a dream, because I will be doing this project with a whole theater that really wants to do my project, with full scenography, light, and with a lot of time to research and think what to do. So what I'm gonna share with you is a bit the kitchen of this project. That is the presentation I made for them. That is in English. Sorry for the German subtitles. And you will see how all the things that I was mentioning, all the things that you were seeing in different pieces, that the pieces I show you, are making sense all together in this opera. It's a very short 5 minutes presentation. Let me see if I find it.
L'étranger by Camus is a novel and a philosophy treatise at the same time. Camus shares deep metaphysical concepts using a story. But he didn't write a philosophy dissertation. He wrote a novel. Our opera, like the novel, is the existential trip of a man going through different moments, each one portrayed in a different scene, a different Stimmung. Each atmosphere is carefully composed. As a shaped cloud made of sounds, gestures, light, and the human voice. I've made a selection of objects inspired by the novel. A typewriter, electric fans in the attorney's office.
Sorry.
I chose them because of their sound and their stage possibilities. They are orchestrated together with the ensemble and the singers. They are sound objects and scenography objects at the same time. The light is bright, in contrast with the somber music. A percussionist plays vibraphone as if it is a gigantic typewriter, using the hands. The mechanical typing is a piece of music that also shows how Meursault's existential questions become a criminal record in the attorney's office. But what makes this existential drama an opera is the human voice. The singers come in and out from these atmospheres, leading us from one cloud to the other, carrying the flow of the opera through the different states of mind. Singing and singing, singing through, singing expressive melodies that flow in and out through the whole textural world of instruments and objects. Meursault is the man that raises his voice against the collective common sense, in and out of the human cloud. Je t'aime has to be said in French. Everybody understands. French has its own music, its own atmosphere. The stage is not an empty box where we drop our props and singers. It is not a decor. It is a vital space that is alive and breathes together with the music. The prison, the funeral, the trial, the man in dialogue with himself are different scenes where the space and the life work together with the music, the text, and the musicians. A big choir of ventilators embodies the summer, the burden of the heat. It also characterizes the jury in the trial scene, with their spinning heads saying, "No." This combination of things is not a decor, it is a truly multidisciplinary composition. Our opera is a cloud, and it's also a game of chess, where move might move all the disciplines together, build the atmospheres, bodies, voices, objects, and lights, shape a unique drama that doesn't aim to describe Camus, but to reveal his questions, live and fresh, creating space on stage that is in fact a space in our minds, a space in your mind.
Okay, so that's my next project. I will be working in that next year, or we don't know exactly when it's going to be because of the pandemic. Well, certainly it's going to be a lot of work. So, well, with this, I want to finish my presentation and leave some space for questions and comments. Is there some comments or questions? Abstract, but beautiful. I like that. Hey, Rami.
Okay. So yeah, I do have a question, and it's about the some of the very quiet objects that you have used in your pieces that are not amplified. And I was wondering about the acoustic or basically the like how loud they were in the concert hall and how um, easy or maybe not easy was it for them to be heard, to be listened to in the hall. Thank you.
Usually, there's not any problem with. I don't use amplification at all. If something has to be amplified, I don't use it, because what I think that the microphone, in a way, is not only amplifying but changing the quality of the sound. So if I want to work with something amplified, for me it's not a choice of volume, it's a choice of quality of sound. Usually my music is quite soft in general, but there's absolutely no problem with amplification. Of course, you have to take care of the conditions around the music, not only the object, but also of the instrument. For example, the pieces for cello, they are playing with very, very upper harmonics, and some of them are very soft. And everything is audible. And what I like is creating an atmosphere. So at the beginning of the concert, you have to adjust, and maybe you move a little bit in your chair, and it sounds very loud. So that's also creating a concentration state that, in my experience, is not something that is relaxed. In this very quiet music, there's a lot of tension, in the sense that you're keeping sometimes the breathing. But most of the times, amplification is just not necessary in a medium-sized hall. All the things for this opera of Camus, I am using like a hand fan, and then you have to explore and find one that is sounding, and then it's perfectly audible. You need a bit of research in the object, but then also how to use it. If I use that together with a tutti, it's an orchestration thing. You cannot hear that, so you have to take care very much of the object in terms of combination.
Thank you.
James. Hey, James.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for a lovely presentation.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about a sense of form and development, particularly with the piece tissues, because I love the very tactile and the very it's very easy to be able to experience the piece and to be able to envision the globules, the molecules, and the physical elements of it, with relating to skin, tissues, muscles, etc., etc. It's almost biological music. It's very, yeah, it's interesting. And I just wanted to ask, as you move from one idea to the next, how do you plan out the orchestration of the ideas, beginning from this very gradual variation between tight clusters of notes to the glissandi with the timpani, for instance, organizing everything.
Thank you for your question. Just working with sound, with the color of sound, it doesn't mean that it's an improvisation. Today in this presentation, I was talking more about the objects, the sound quality of objects and instruments. But my music is extremely, extremely mathematical. Because I found that the objects are in combination together with the form. It's what you do with them and what you do with them on time. Tissue is a piece that is being extremely calculated every sound because it belongs to a structure. So I have different sections. Every section is built sound by sound, building in terms of harmony. So the whole plan of harmony from the first note until the end. Every section also is really thought in terms of rhythm. So I thought in the whole piece like a tissue, and sometimes you have this, and sometimes you have this, and then sometimes you have this, and this is all expressed with density and with the internal rhythm. Rhythm is not only like one rhythmic life, but the whole rhythm and rhythmical breathing of the whole piece. So usually I work with in a very, very strict way, and I have all these parameters, and I have what's going on with pitch from the beginning till the end, what's going on with rhythm, with internal rhythmical behavior, what's going on in terms of range, what's going on in terms of density, what's going on in terms of spatialization. So where are things happening, how the sound also is traveling in space. So I have these two things. I have the exploration with sounds, and then I have to do something with that. I have to build structures, and all my music has like very, very strong structures that I need. I need to make these things breathe. But I don't want my music that sounds structured. I don't want the music that sounds mathematical. I think like a skeletal system that is there holding the whole thing, but you see a person moving. So it's an underlying thing that is fundamental. And otherwise, everything is doesn't have a body, doesn't have entity. It's always a communication with sound and structure. So I don't know if I am answering your question.
Yes, I think that helps. Thank you. As you build and move from one structure to the next, particularly with tissue, I'm wondering, do you picture it as different parts of the skeleton then, like in a very literal way, or?
No, in fact, I mean, I have this first moment that I have a concept that is the concept of the skin, and the skeleton also is a concept that somehow I just I came out with this right now. So I didn't think about that before, but I think it's a good image that you have the sound and you have the structure and the line behind of the piece. Once I have my clear concept, my clear idea about the whole piece, and then I start working. I have files and files with sketches, with mathematical structures. I mean, I work more like with a calculator than a piano or something like this. So everything is absolutely built thing by thing. So that's the idea of skeletal behind that. Is in some music, I mean, the skeletal in a way is more obvious, no? That you see the structure, you can hear it. I think in my music also, you can hear it, but it's a bit underlying, material and form and material.
Thank you. It's quite clear. Thank you.
I have a question about meaning. And I guess maybe what the listener or the observer would mean, what meanings they would get intentionally or unintentionally from your work. Specifically with simple sound objects, you know, if you have a fan on the stage, it's not just the sound of the fan, but it's also the extra musical meanings that fans have, and those things are there. Do you anticipate those things? Do you try and, I guess I didn't see enough of your work to really know if you contend with them with that kind of extra musical meaning that can be brought in and maybe overwhelm the sound, you know. And I'm thinking of like Pierre Schaeffer, who tried
Yeah.
to avoid those extra musical meanings. Well, I don't know all of his work, but I know some of his writings, he talks about trying to avoid those things in Musique Concrete. So I just was wondering if you're thinking of those things when you're placing a fan on the stage with an orchestra. It's also a really wonderful thing to see. The first thing I thought of was seeing a flautist play into a fan. It was just so cool and unusual. So I'm not
Yes,
against it by any means. Yeah.
No, I mean, also you can be, no, right? I think it's a very valid question. It's a very interesting question. And of course, I think about all the things. I don't think in sense of giving a message. I choose my objects mainly because they work sound-wise. And for example, the ventilators also, they are like kinetic machines. Also, the rhythm of the visual rhythm also is, I have to take care of that because it's happening. And about the connotations, what I like to think, I am thinking different things in different times of my life. I'm working with objects for a long time. What I think in this moment of my life is like we have composers like John Cage that was bringing all these objects into the stage in a way just to confront the academy. It's like a fight, and so bringing everyday life into stage in a way just to break all these structures, especially from the German music or the academic music in the 40s, in the 50s. And for me, the meaning of bringing objects on stage is very different right now. I mean, Cage did it. We learned a lot from him, and our fight now is completely different. I like to think that my movement is like opposite. I like to think that people go to a concert, see a ventilator on the stage, and understand the beauty of the sounds of everything around. So this person then go back home and face their own objects and they start listening all the objects around, like if they are modern music. Start listening the abstraction, the beauty of a ventilator. That sounds very bombastic, but the way I'm saying it. But then just paying attention to everything around. So in a way, what I don't do, I don't want to just break the academy or fight against the establishment. I mean, Cage already won that battle. What I want is just to bring to our lives and my audience lives abstraction, beauty, and beauty in everything. It's not that the beauty is in a museum. The beauty is not only in a clarinet or in a virtuoso piano player. The beauty is in everything around, the beauty of sound. So in a way, I like to think that this is somehow is a way of getting closer, but not just to bring the music down, right? It's just to find the beauty and the power that all these humble objects they have. And in a way, it's the power that every person has. And just to acknowledge that's in a way my philosophy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very much with you in that sentiment.
There's now there's a new line in anthropology studies that the theory of thing. that is studying objects and studying the meaning of objects, the philosophical meaning of any object. And with a heavy weight in thinking in recycling and what does it mean just to put something in the trash, you know? And what I like to think in my music that is also political in the sense that I am making music with things that are considered obsolete. And these things, I take them back from the trash can and I make something beautiful. And it's not like a resistance act, like a nostalgic. It's not nostalgic, I want to make like a piece for an old radio. It's a resistance act. It's like I'm saying, this object is beautiful. This object is not obsolete. And who is deciding that? And who is putting this label in this object that is obsolete? Because all these labels about being obsolete are applied to objects, but are also applied to people, to ideologies. So from my humble corner, I like to think that I am recovering all these things, all these found objects, because they are beautiful. And there's a lot to be done with them. They don't deserve to die. So between the original sound and the sound. A train whistle or clicking clack of train.
We could read that comment that Lansing McCloskey did on the chat for people watching on YouTube because they won't have access to it. So
Okay.
what he said regarding the sweeping broom, Lansing said, but it was impossible because there is an immediate and implicit connection between the original sound source and the sound in a Musique Concrete piece, regardless of the intention of the composer. A train whistle or clickety-clack of a train tracks are immediately recognized by the audience, in reference to Pierre Schaeffer quote.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I don't want to hide the objects. So I want to show them physically, and I don't want to hide their sounds. What I am really working is in the context. You can have the whistle of a train, but then if you have this together with an orchestra, and can you imagine have a real train? You're not hiding the train, but you are using that in a context, and it's a context that is different for what it was thought. So I think with object, in my experience, you have two ways. You can really find an enormous amount of new sounds that they are amazing, and maybe you even don't recognize the source. But always I want to show it. I want to show what I am doing. I want to show my objects. I'm so proud, and I want them to be on stage, like a statement. But also you can use their sounds in context, in a different context. When I'm using the sound of a ventilator with a multiphonic of a bass clarinet, in my intention, what I am just is finding the beauty in the ventilator. So when you hear the ventilator, then you also hear something else, some magic around that was always there, because the magic is also in your way of seeing things. A ventilator can be a lot of things, like a clarinet can be a lot of different things. So of course, I understand the idea of Pierre Schaeffer, but also what I like very much about Pierre Schaeffer, that he was an amazing writer also. Like all his ideas are fundamental, but also the way they are expressed. When he's talking about musique concrete, he's not referring to make music with objects. What is concrete is not the source of the sound, but is the sound itself. He goes to the heart of the sound, analyze it, and make music with the structure of a sound. And he's using these sounds that are mostly not coming from instruments, like the whistle of the train. But what is concrete, in his words, is not because he's using a whistle. It's because he's using the sound and getting inside and the physical possibilities of the sound. And that way it comes all the denomination of musique concrete.
Do you think, sorry, just to follow up,
Yeah.
do you think about traditional instruments as sound objects too? Like you have a vibrating string and on attached to a wooden resonator. Do you conceptualize instruments like that too?
You mean build my own?
No, not build your own, but not keep the distinction between the instrumental, the orchestra, and the sound object. Do you think about the orchestra as a sound object as well? Does that matter to you?
Yeah, but I don't make a difference in terms of orchestration.
Uh-huh.
So every sound for me is kind of a democracy. I have to give a lot of attention to the objects because with a violin you can do a lot of things, and with the objects you can do 2 or 3. So you have to find out. But in terms of orchestration, for me, is the same in terms of sound. But as you asked very well before, it's not the same in terms of stage. You can have a sound with a string telephone that may be very similar of a sound of making noise with a bow in a violin. It's almost no difference. But of course, the gesture is very different if you see coming from one or coming from the other. So in terms of sound, I'm just working in this area that all the sounds are orchestrated by the sound qualities. Same thing that Pierre Schaeffer made in his music. And then there's other aspects to attend that I'm taking care of those. I am answering your question then?
Very much, yeah. And I just keep coming up with other ones. I'm curious about this. You mentioned trying to find a balance between a sound object that has maybe 3 sounds it can do against a violin, which has a lot more. How do you keep the sound objects from I guess being something like just effects, like being heard as mere effects and not musical material? Because that sounds like a very difficult balance to strike, where the orchestra could potentially overwhelm the sound object.
Yes, but that is a composer task. It's like when you have to balance extended techniques in a way that they are. You have to think in what is doing, who is doing what, and how it sounds. And with the object, there's a lot of personal exploration and finding ways of playing it and ways of explaining that in a musical score. I've been very lucky because my music is played, I live in Holland, in Amsterdam, and my music is played everywhere. And many times I'm not there. Just people find out what to do, just reading my scores. And it works very well, but it's a lot of work of research and notation, and how to communicate that in a very effective, simple way. That is, it's very, very, very difficult to do. I have music for trumpet that are using natural filters with a bucket full of water. And so I have a lot of very precise actions I have with the sound, with the bell of the trumpet close to the water. And I have explaining that in the score. And it's not very difficult to do. It's more difficult to understand. You have to give it really a twist in your mind. But then I know this piece is played everywhere. And sometimes I just Googling my name, and then I found a version of this trumpet music that I don't know even who is the trumpet player. I'm getting all these recordings, and it's working very well. All the versions are a bit different because the material is super fragile, but at the same time, the piece is there. So everyone has a little bit space to add a little bit of personality also that I love. But at the same time, it's my music, it's my concept, it's my piece, and sometimes it's a bit sounds are different for every trumpet player in a range. So when working with fragility, but also that applies to musical instruments, it's like when you write down a multiphonic. I mean, depends which multiphonic you write, but the possibilities are that like in every player is going to sound a bit different. But at the same time, it's not going to be very different. So it's like this range of what is your piece, what is the performer adding, I think it's fascinating and can be done right in music, because that gives a lot of freedom and this openness that I love. And you have this fresh act in the moment, playing someone else's music, studying a lot, like the composer made a lot of work to write a score, and then it's something always in between. But I think that is the same with classical music. You know, you hear different versions of Ravel, of any composer, and then even if it's based on notes, within that context, I mean, versions are different. So same with modern music. I am answering your question, Ben.
Yeah.
So do you have further questions or comments? Okay. So I think we are done, right, Maria?
Yes, it looks like we reached the end.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for having me, having this wonderful space, and having the opportunity to show what I do. And it was also very nice to hear from many of you and exchange all these ideas and getting to know each other in this opportunity that we are all like isolated, but also sharing experiences.
Thank you so much for joining. And this was a wonderful talk. I'm looking forward to looking more of your music.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Bye-bye.